Reconstructing Home, Displacement and Exile in Immigrant Communities, a thematic study of Mيرال الطحاوي's Prof. 2011 and راجية حسيب's In the Language of Miracles 2015 by Assistant Professor Salim Mohamed Emam. Introduction. To immigrants, the concept of home is not easy to define, for they are burdened by the sense of being torn between two countries and two cultures. They live oscillating between assimilation and rejection in their quest for self-definition. As immigrants, they experience the feelings of estrangement, alienation, and loneliness, especially when their move is initiated from a less civilized to a more civilized society. This is mostly the case of Egyptian immigrants to America. Even if they live in the US and have American passports, Arabs are still considered a second-degree class. This undoubtedly results in identity crises in the shattered identities of those immigrants. Terence Hawkes argues that a valid sense of self may have been eroded by dislocation resulting from immigration, or it may have been destroyed by cultural denigration, the oppression of the indigenous personality and culture by a supposedly superior cultural model. In immigrant literature, the question of legal and emotional belonging and whether home is a geographical or emotional entity is quite relevant. Indeed, immigrants are placed on a middle ground between the home they originally belong to and the home they have created for themselves. Aim of the research. This paper attempts to study two novels that belong to the category immigrant literature, written by Egyptian immigrant female writers living in the US. Prof. 2011 by Mيرال الطحاوي and In the Language of Miracles 2015 by راجية حسيب. Living in the US, Arab writers of different backgrounds and origins have attempted to voice the concerns of Eastern people, highlighting the tensions they suffer for being torn between East and West, past and present, as well as traditional and modern modes of life. Like many other immigrant writers, both Mيرال الطحاوي and راجية حسيب have the starting point of their own experiences, being Arab writers living in the US and experiencing the conflict between two different worlds. Accordingly, in a sense, their characters are mirror images of themselves, reflecting their personal migratory experience and the mixing of cultures in their lives. This paper aims at studying the position of the Arab immigrants in America and whether they are placed within the boundaries of the American nation or dismissed at the periphery as outcasts. It explores the themes of displacement, exile, identity crisis, physical and emotional belonging, as well as memory and nostalgia. In a sense, the two novels chosen complement each other, because الطحاوي's Prof. depicts the failure of the American dream, whereas Hasib's In the Language of Miracles depicts the limitations imposed on the realization of this dream. Mيرال الطحاوي's Prof. 2011. Prof., the fourth novel by Egyptian writer Mيرال الطحاوي, was shortlisted for the Arabic Booker Prize for 2011 and won the 2010 Naguib Mahfouz Medal for Literature. The novel was originally written in Arabic in 2010 and was translated into English in 2011 by Samah Selim. الطحاوي's Bedouin life is reflected in her novel because she is influenced by her conservative Bedouin upbringing and tribal customs. Even though the setting of her novel is present-day America in 2008, soon after the election of President Obama, scenes of the protagonist's past tribal traditions are told in flashbacks. Mيرال الطحاوي's Prof. reveals the disillusionment experienced by Arab immigrants in America, She presents a myriad of characters who are frustrated at the failure of the American dream and tormented by their inability to achieve what they have abandoned their homeland for. The readers witness those immigrants' sense of dislocation and displacement and follow them in their journey of reconstructing home, attempting to be assimilated and integrated into the new land. In uncovering the different stories of immigrants, Al-Tahawi unravels the clash between those immigrants' Eastern backgrounds and the American society they have come to live in. Hind, the protagonist, flees her homeland Egypt to escape its restrictive traditions, as well as to avoid the consequences of a failed marriage, thinking it is easy to construct a new home and make a new beginning, only to find out that she is out of place and is always reminded of her otherness. That is why it is not astonishing that Hind lived in the US with memories of her past and her Bedouin childhood, because nostalgia is naturally a driving force for immigrant people. We are told Hind's story, her childhood and teenager years in Egypt, and then her life after she relocates to New York. Moving between the two lives, we get to know more about the lives of other people in those two worlds. Besides Hind, we are introduced to a number of female immigrants who represent various stories of despair and ill fate. For instance, there are Dauji, the Haitian girl who cleans the houses, Nazahet, the Bosnian who does the shopping for the rich Yemeni families, despite being a doctor in her country, Jojo, the Mexican who foretells the future for the passer-bys, Emilia, the 80-year-old Russian who ramages the garbage bins for old items to sell them in flea markets, Fatima, the Somali who works as a cashier and has nowhere to sleep. The female immigrants come with a past burdened with emotional and physical abuse, battery, abandonment, and deprivation. They come pursuing the American dream to discover that it is very difficult to attain. They are all calmly watching life pass by and aching to become a part of it. Individuality is marred, and Hind has the feeling that they all become sorry copies of each other in the end. They all look exactly like herself in ways that are painful, frightening, and comforting at the same time. At the end, Hind unexpectedly identifies with the life of an Egyptian immigrant called Lilith, who lost her memory. Upon Lilith's death, when Hind rifles through her books and papers, she is astonished at the similarities she discovers between herself and Lilith. She realizes that they have the same photos, the same stories, and the same words. Moreover, their sons look alike and probably they have the same fate. Hind tells Emilia, "Doesn't she look a little like me? Doesn't this boy look like my son? I know these papers, and I know that I have written every word in them myself. This is my handwriting. They belong to me. I feel like I have lived all this before, that these letters are mine, these words are mine." Indeed, one wonders why Al-Tahawi chooses for her protagonist to identify with a minor dead character at the end. To deduce the answer of this question, we need to examine the way Al-Tahawi depicts immigrants as sharing the same experiences and having the same sufferings. This scene is very significant as it implies that all immigrants are the same. They share the same feelings and the same destiny. It's a very symbolic hint that the experience of immigration is a shared experience among all immigrants. In an interview with Aaron Badi, when asked about the ending that contains no resolution, Al-Tahawi affirms, "For me, trying to belong, it's something that has no end. I try to make it like a memory. You can see in other people what you will be. The hero finds in the old lady's stuff her own stuff. It's for me the same destiny. Because you do not belong to somewhere, you don't really have someone to keep you. It's the same." Rajiya Hasib's In the Language of Miracles 2015. If Al-Tahawi depicts in her novel the immigrants' frustrated hopes and unfulfilled dreams, Rajiya Hasib shows in her novel that even when immigrants succeed in realizing their dreams, their difference and otherness can never be eliminated. Hasib was born and raised in Egypt and moved to the US when she was 23. In the Language of Miracles was her first novel, which received an honorable mention from the Arab American Book Awards and was a New York Times editor's choice. Hasib's In the Language of Miracles closely observes the immigrants' intricate relationships to their adopted homelands. It traces the story of Al-Minshawi family, an Egyptian family living a prosperous life in America. After immigrating from Egypt to the US, Samir al-Nagla al-Minshawi managed to achieve success, where Samir started his medical career successfully. They started by living in a small apartment, but later moved to a big house in the New Jersey suburb of Somerset. Their 3 children attended school with the daughter of their neighbors and best friends, Natalie Bradstreet. More than a decade later, a devastating event turned their life upside down when their son Hussam killed Natalie and then committed suicide. Although Samir and Nagla al-Minshawi seem to have realized the American dream, their stable life is shattered because of their eldest son's crime. This crime turns the family into outcasts in the country they have long considered home. Their estrangement is highlighted when the crime is interpreted in the context of the racial and religious difference. The novel begins a year after the death of Hussam and Natalie. The narrative traces al-Minshawis during the few days leading up to the memorial service organized by the Bradstreets to commemorate the daughter's death. Whereas Nagla is troubled, Samir is seeking reconciliation and acceptance. However, the real problem is with Khalid, their second son, who has to pay the price of his brother's crime and to suffer the consequences of his brother's guilt. Hasib manages to portray the family's attempt to salvage the life they have exerted tremendous efforts to achieve. In their various attempts to find acceptance and reconciliation, Hasib uncovers the prejudiced attitudes toward Muslim immigrants in the post-11th of September. Hasib says in an interview, "It therefore pains me to see how often people fall back on stereotyping when discussing violent acts. How many times have we witnessed news anchors, analysts, or even people we know and love claim that a certain act of violence was predictable because of the perpetrator's race, ethnicity, skin color, or religion." Indeed, the novel is about being a Muslim immigrant in post-11th of September America, where the abominable act of one can demonize the whole race. Hasib confirms in an interview that the family, torn apart by violence, seemed like a perfect microcosm for the experience of Muslim Arab Americans post the 11th of September. She states that because she came to America before the 11th of September, she witnessed the painful backlash that many Muslims suffered from after this heinous terrorist attack. That's why Hasib avers al-Minshawi's position would not have been that critical had they belonged to a different race and religion or had the setting been the pre-11th of September. Conclusion. In short, both Mيرال al-Tahawi's Prof and Rajiya Hasib's In the Language of Miracles trace the effects of immigration, showing how the identities of immigrants are formed by the sense of exile, estrangement, otherness, and the search for a true home. Both novels address the worries faced by immigrant characters, showing both the possibilities and limitations of their abilities to realize the American dream. Thank you.